pretty substantial leap of faith when you're coming to a company, and being that they were a key competitor, I wasn't privy to some of the information that I needed to make a really good decision.
Growing up, my father always told me that if you associate with the right people, you can't help but succeed. You could tell that these people were really, really, really smart. Young, but really, really smart.
I was standing there with everybody else, but I didn't have a clue. I hadn't read a spec. I'd never spoken to anyone. I just signed the offer letter.
So I wanted to get on board with this company who seemed to have, you know, an amazing talent pool.
My personal opinion is that here in Silicon Valley, most civilians are amateurs.
I didn't know at the time that they didn't have working parts.
No one could tell me anything. I mean, Scott Feller's, well, I'd like to tell you, but I can't tell you.
And it was all smoke and mirrors.
We really didn't have a product.
I knew they'd do good things. No matter what they picked, I knew they'd do something special.
I started looking at the pedigrees of the people involved.
It's the people. You know, that's what makes this company so amazing and such a long-term win.
They were gambling this risk, and I thought, that's not a bad train to jump on.
The individual chips come from what we call a wafer, and the wafer is sliced from a single crystal of silicon. If you have a really good seed crystal, you'll grow a really good company.
Knowing that you have someone who has all the experience of making companies be successful in Gordon Campbell, it was a no-brainer.
One of the most interesting things about companies now is you actually can have direct contact with your customers over the internet.
Tarolli was one of the early SGI employees and acknowledged 3D grew in the industry.
Gary Tarolli is a little bit older and really smart.
One of the guys sent me mail and his signature was, you know, I own a 3DFX, I don't have a life. So I sent him back mail saying, Gary Tarolli, I designed 3DFX stuff, I don't have a life either.
The unique thing that we had, I think, as three founders was ultimate trust in each of our abilities to do what was required.
Smith was very knowledgeable in the market and customer area. And really understood, you know, what the technology had accomplished and where it was headed.
He would always run into the most, you know, subtle computer errors that would just totally frustrate him. I've got a 120-page business plan, and now my machine crashes, it won't load it.
I'm pretty good in technology, so they would come to me with ideas and say, this doesn't make any sense. And they're also pretty good in business, and so I would say, we could try this, and they go, oh, you're crazy, that'll never work.
We're living the dream of starting a company and having it be extremely successful, producing products that customers, you know, write in and say, you've changed my life. I mean, that is extremely satisfying to all of us.
Sellers, although he was a little bit young, was, you know, really polished and very knowledgeable, particularly for a guy his age.
He's a big, tall, blonde kid, and he's really nice too.
It really is just amazing to be part of it, to be part of a team that we've hired that, you know, has extremely smart people, everyone working together towards common goals.
Because there's two things I respect, right? I guess the people who had a technology vision and the people who saw business opportunity and capitalized on it.
I was in the aerospace business. And one day, one of my clients, which was MIPS Computers, which built the RISC computing chips that were in Silicon Graphics workstations, they offered me a job to quit consulting and come on board there. Well, MIPS ultimately was acquired by Silicon Graphics. And at Silicon Graphics, met a guy there who shared my passion for the fact that the PC was going to emerge as this new platform for 3D graphics. And he introduced me to Gary and to Scott. They were in the process of spinning off a company from Silicon Graphics called Pellucid.
Pellucid was founded on the notion of taking 3D graphics from SGI-style graphics down to from the workstation down to the PC.
Midway through our experience at Pellucid, which ultimately was acquired by a company called MediaVision that built sound cards and care less about 3D graphics, this crazy guy came in from this video game company. His name was John Passerb. And this guy said, have you guys ever thought about doing a product for video games? And we said, why would we do that? We're in the design market. We build serious computer graphics.
And MediaVision really wanted us to focus on very mainstream 2D Windows accelerators.
I kept this passion for 3D to the point where the president of MediaVision finally told me,
Ross, if you don't quit talking about 3D, I'm going to chopped off your hand.
It seemed like I had limited career options there.
I think Ross was the first to leave, or were you the first to leave?
I was the first to leave.
And so Herb and I go to this trade show. We have no idea what this is all about. And we'd always been, used to SIGGRAPH and Comdex, and now we're in this coin-op show, and very, very bizarre. And this was the trade show where Sega was launching Virtua Fighter. And we're looking at, the kinds of 3D they were doing and thought, hey, we can do this.
My wife said, you guys just stop talking and go do it.
So meanwhile, we're out pitching all these other people about funding this 3D graphics company and doing consulting work on the side and all this stuff. And meet this guy, Gordy Campbell.
Well, I was actually about a year into Tech Farm, and Tech Farm specializes in working with new startups.
Tech Farm was about as small as we were at the time.
Yeah.
I mean, they were sharing office with this networking company called the Land Guys. I mean, they were a hoopty company just like we were.
I was interviewing a marketing candidate for another company called Exponential, and the marketing candidate was Ross Smith.
Ross was sort of not too excited during the interview.
And I guess I was saying all the right words, but he could tell that I didn't have a passion for going out and trying to sell microprocessors.
He just didn't have his heart in it.
And Gordy at the end asked him,
what does he really wanted to do?
and Ross told him.
So I called Scott, and I called Gary. Gary lives in Boston, and meanwhile, he and Scott had been working on the chip simulator. So I said, hey, I've got this opportunity. We might be able to get funded through this guy I just met, Gordy Campbell. And so I goes, stop what you're doing and let's try and do a demo.
We were extremely impressed with Gordy. He had all sorts of connections and wonderful ideas. They had gotten far enough along in the design where we could actually simulate what the chip would do, and we could make what we call movie loops, which is not a real-time rendering. It's a time-based rendering of what we thought the images would be from the chip.
After a couple meetings, we decided that we would actually try and put a company together.
And so that was kind of the beginning of the quest for money. So literally 5 months went by. We're all working out of my house basically in Palo Alto. We have all these computers all over the place and printers. We'd gone out and rented a bunch of stuff to put together this whole business plan. SGI workstations and Macintoshes and PCs all strung around. My roommates were going crazy. I flew back several times back to Boston, and Caroline, Gary's wife, would feed us, and it was a wonderful place to work. And suddenly it was Thursday, and Gary said, we are going outside today. I said, what? He said, we haven't gone outside all week.
It took 6 months of working back and forth with Ross to get the business plan to where it made any sense.
First, we're going to build PCs for the arcade market and use this technology to do it. And then we were going to build motherboards with this technology on it. And Ross, for literally months and months, had this error in a formula in his Excel worksheet. And suddenly, what seemed to be a healthy business turned out to be a disaster.
We took the business plan out at that time and showed it to the investment bankers.
Within 30 days after we started pitching, we were funded.
And they loved it. And every round of financing we did after that, we did 3, was a complete sellout.